Legislating loyalty or discrimination. The Israeli government deliberates a new citizenship law requiring an oath of allegiance to the Jewish character of the state. Is a deal being cut to bolster peace talks? And what will happen to non-Jewish Israelis? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Sami Zaidan. Israel's Prime Minister Binyamin Netanyahu has reintroduced a proposal requiring any non-Jew taking Israeli citizenship to swear allegiance to Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Well, Palestinians say the law would legitimize discrimination and the dispossession of the indigenous people. Mohammed Shukir has the story.
No citizenship without loyalty. The slogan the Israel Baituno party, headed by the Russian immigrant Avigdor Lieberman, used as the centerpiece of his campaign in 2009. It's now the second largest party in the governing coalition after the Prime Minister's Binyamin Netanyahu Likud party. And this loaded slogan no longer remains just a slogan, since Netanyahu has adopted the proposal to amend the citizenship law.
Nowadays, there is a great struggle to cancel and blur the character of the Jewish state as the nation state for the Jewish people and say it does not belong to the Jewish people nationally. I think that the struggle on this issue, internationally and internally, is a necessary struggle.
The new law stipulates that whoever applies for Israeli citizenship has to swear allegiance to Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Labour Party ministers who oppose the bill say they expect a new freeze on settlement building as a payoff. This will enable Netanyahu to extend the freeze on settlement activities in the West Bank and to continue peace talks with the Palestinians without breaking apart his coalition. If approved, the new law will affect non-Jews who seek Israeli citizenship, particularly the Arab Israelis who make about 20% of the Israeli population. However, those who seek citizenship under the law of return, which gives people of Jewish ancestry the right to settle in Israel and gain citizenship, will remain unaffected. Opponents say it is illegal.
The motives behind this law are undemocratic because there's a clear discrimination against Arab citizens. We appealed to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice to express our objections and will go to court to abolish it because it's unconstitutional.
Observers say it will mainly apply to Palestinians married to Israelis who seek citizenship on the basis of family reunification. The Palestinian Authority has agreed to recognize Israel as a state, but has rejected the demand to recognize its Jewish character. They say it's unfair that it ignores the Israeli Arab citizens of Israel, and that in effect it invalidates the right of return for refugees from previous wars. Mohammed Shukir for Inside Story.
Well, joining us now to discuss the issue further, our guests in Jerusalem, Ahmed Tibi. He's leader of the Arab Movement for Change and Deputy Speaker of the Knesset. In Tel Aviv, Raanan Gessin, former advisor to former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. And also in Tel Aviv, Libby Lenkinsky-Friedlander from the Association for Civil Rights in Israel. Welcome to the show. If I could start with Raanan Gessin, do you think this proposed law undermines democracy?
No, I don't think so. I think that from a purely legal, constitutional point of view, every country, which has a democracy, its government can legislate law, provided that these laws are not opposed to the basic law or to the Constitution. Israel does not have a constitution, but the basic law. So in terms of legitimacy, legality, it's perfect. It's okay.
But not every country, not every country requires
no, wait a minute.
citizens to take an oath to a Jewish or Christian or religious character of the state, do they?
Well, that's why. Well, you didn't let me finish. I say I argue with the wisdom of adding another law to the book when there are so many constitutional documents and laws which already have established the Jewish character of the state of Israel. Resolution 181 calls about the establishment of a Jewish state. Okay, the Declaration of Independence calls for the establishment of a Jewish democratic state, which gives equal rights to other citizens. There are all sorts of laws on the book which, if violated, in other words, would automatically, let's say, would enable the government or the authorities to revoke citizenship of anyone who disagrees. So it's unnecessary to state this or to come out with this additional law, which can cause really political damage without really adding anything to the Jewish nature and character of the state, which I believe it is a Jewish state. It is the homeland of the Jewish people, and I don't need to prove it anymore.
All right, let's bring Libby Lenkinski-Friedlander into this discussion since we're talking law and constitutionality. Mr. Gessin's comments there, it's unnecessary but still legal.
I would say to that the amendment that we're looking at represents a major shift from the existing declaration as prescribed by the law today. Today, the declaration is towards the state of Israel, to its to the laws of the state and to its institutions, requiring that those wishing to achieve citizenship pledge their loyalty to the Jewish state of Israel, or the Jewish and democratic state of Israel, represents a loyalty to an ideology. To the best of my knowledge, democracies don't require that their current citizens or those wishing to obtain citizenship align themselves with a particular ideology.
But Mr. Gessin pointed out there is a whole slew of documents that seem to indicate that anyway. I mean, I think the 92 Basic Law talks about allegiance to Jewish values and democratic values, doesn't it? Is it really a new departure?
I don't make the argument that it's a new departure, but I will say that at the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, we're closely monitoring this amendment as part of an onslaught of anti-democratic legislative initiatives that arose during the last Knesset session and that we're expecting to push through in this upcoming Knesset season. It's certainly a representation of an existing climate that is discriminatory, and also a climate which will allow the promotion of anti-democratic legislation in our current government and in our current parliament.
All right, Ahmed Tibi, of course, this proposed law wouldn't affect those, or immediately affect those who already have citizenship, non-Jews who have citizenship. Why are Arab Israelis so concerned?
First of all, because even we are talking, or the amendment is talking about new citizens who are willing to be citizens of the State of Israel, it aimed directly for Palestinians who are married or willing to have family reunification inside Israel. That's to say that both are affected, the new citizen and the already older citizen. But it is much more important as a signal, as a statement by the state towards the Arab minority, towards all the non-Jews in Israel. And it is very much important to say that it is a part of a program of Israel Beitenu led by Lieberman.
But Mr. Gessin might argue, as he has, that this is within the rights of any state to require its citizens to take an oath of loyalty.
The existing declaration, and every state is free to do so, is talking about loyalty to the state and laws. Now, the demand is loyalty to ideology, to a concept. I can't accept ideology which is anti-Arab, which is anti-Palestinian, which is totally vanishing the Palestinian narrative. Accepting this definition or demanding from the PLO, for example, as Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing, is to tell the whole world that the Palestinian narrative was totally false and the Zionist narrative is the right one. It is almost
I think you've made that
the
point
whole
clear.
history of the Palestinian people.
Ms. Friedlander, let's take those points back to Mr. Gessin. What is the logic or value in asking a non-Jewish citizen of Israel, in the case of Arabs, people who have been living there for generations in their own land, to now have to swear allegiance to Judaism or the values of Judaism, which they don't subscribe to, in order to remain citizens?
Well, I will reiterate what I just said. I think the law is unnecessary, and I suspect, I mean, I have this suspicions because of being in the government and working in the government for so long, that this is a politically motivated legislation that has to do with the internal setup of the coalition. And that's why I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's aimed against Arabs, and all Arabs, 1.2 or 1.3 million Arabs who live in Israel, have citizenship. And yes, Ahmed Tibi is right. We're talking about family reunion. But even with the case of family reunion, I don't think that they should be subjected to that.
As we've heard from Mr. Tibi, they do kind of feel discriminated against, don't they? Because they might not really be wholeheartedly wanting to sign up to another religion.
Right, that's why I don't think you need to rub their head in the sand. You don't need that. The real test of loyalty, by the way, the real test of loyalty is abiding by the laws of the country. If Ahmed Tibi or anyone of it violates the laws of the country, then we throw the book at him. There is the courts, then you have even the ability to revoke citizenship. There's no need to use this measure. As I said, I suspect that the measure is used not so much against the Palestinian, but maybe to satisfy some demands, internal coalition consideration that Lieberman has and Netanyahu feels he needs to satisfy. That is my
That's
suspicion.
an interesting point. We can take it back to Ahmed Tibi. Do you think that this... I'm sorry, I think... Just give me 1 second, Ahmed Tibi. Perhaps if a political deal is being cut, do you think that this sort of compromise is enough to move, in any case, this very suffering peace process forward?
Besides the fact that I am skeptic about the future of this so-called peace process, direct negotiation, to be a victim of this process is frustrating. Why should any political deal, in order to keep the peace of the coalition between Netanyahu and Lieberman, I should be the victim? The Arab minority, Palestinians in Israel, should be the victim. I can't accept this at all. You know, Israel, there is no constitution in Israel, but there is so-called basic law, 11 basic laws. According to the basic law of Israel from 1984, Israel is defined, according to the Israeli law, as Jewish and democratic. Look, Jewish before democratic. It was intended. I, all the time, arguing, tackling inside the Knesset, inside the parliament, outside, in the media, trying by democratic tools to try to change it, to explain that there is a contradiction between the two values. If the state is democratic, it believes in equal right for all. But if it defines itself as ethnic definition, Jewish, it is to say that any Jewish citizen is superior than non-Jewish, mainly and namely Arab Palestinian citizens of the State of Israel.
All right, I want to bring in Ms. Friedlander into this discussion.
Exposed.
All right, Ms. Friedlander, is the concern or feeling that perhaps by bringing in this proposed law, it's another step in the direction of perhaps stripping eventually Israeli Arabs of their citizenship?
I would say that this amendment represents both the kind of symbolic signal that Minister Tibi was talking about earlier, and also the practical implication. So what Ra'anan mentioned about the best way to continue not have your citizenship revoked is to abide by the laws of the State of Israel. That's in the current declaration. When the declaration of loyalty is about an ideology, what happens to people who exercise their freedom of expression afterwards that somehow contests this particular ideology? And where is the line to that? So from a civil liberties perspective, it's deeply problematic.
It is deeply problematic. There are many issues to discuss here. Let's take one of them, which is, of course, demographics. Now, the law, as mentioned, would impact those seeking Israeli citizenship. But if it's designed to preserve the Jewish character of Israel, well, already at least 20% of the country is made up of Israeli Arabs. Behind the current legal moves, perhaps lies the fear of what some Israelis call the demographic time bomb. Well, this is why. According to the Israeli Central Bureau of Statistics, the population as a whole within Israel is increasing. But within that population, it's Arabs, especially Muslim Arabs, who have the highest birth rate. 4 children per woman, as opposed to 2.7 for Jewish Israelis. Well, that translates to a natural reproduction rate of about 3% compared to 1.5% for the Jewish population annually. Arabs already hold the majority in 2 geographic regions, the Galilee and the Little Triangle. Let's take the discussion back to Ranan Gessin now. With already 20% of the population there Israeli Arab with a high birth rate, would this law do anything to, in real terms, protect the Jewish nature or character of the state anyway?
No, you don't need the law to protect the character of the state. And look, every time, they try to frighten us that, about the Jewish nature of the state, they bring out the demographic genie out of the bottle.
So why
first
are they
of all, I don't agree
then?
with all the statistics. But nevertheless, that's what because I gave you the answer. I said that this is motivated by some short-term political consideration, and there's no need. There's no need, because the recognition of this land being the homeland of the Jewish people, also the homeland of the Palestinians, but the homeland of the Jewish people was recognized by UN resolution, by the Balfour Declaration, by the League of Nations, by the Declaration of Independence. You don't need to add another law to reaffirm that. Now, with regard to the practical arrangements on the ground, there are laws of the country, and Israel, by the way, and here I oppose Ahmed Tibi, Dr. Tibi, on one thing, because if you look in a comparative sense to Israel compared to other countries in the region, who gives the best protection to minorities, protection under the law, access to Supreme Court? Israel is a shining example, and no other country gives better protection to minorities. Yes, there are problems. There are problems with any minority in any country.
But what about the point which Ms. Friedlander mentioned,
in the same manner you say that people who pledge allegiance in the United States are pledging allegiance to an ideology?
What happens if perhaps Jewish Israelis, who are perhaps not so religiously observant, don't sign up 100% to what's considered Jewish values? Who defines that? And what do you do if someone is perhaps an atheistic ethnic Jew or doesn't subscribe to all the tenets of Zionism?
Yeah, well, I know, look, you tried to put it into a political stranglehold or a political straitjacket. It's not, or an ideological straitjacket, because there are laws on the book. The law of return, no doubt, gives preference to Jews to come to their homeland. And those who come through the law of return don't need to pledge allegiance, don't need to take the oath or anything. The same thing with Arabs who were born in Israel, who are citizens of the state of Israel. So really what it creates, I would say, a rancor. It creates a political atmosphere, which I agree, is not conducive to the talks and is not necessary from the point of view of asserting the Jewishness or the Jewish character of the state, or if you want, the fact that this is the national homeland of the Jewish people. I don't need that law on the book, in my view. I think, as I said, it had some short-term political considerations which had more to satisfy some coalition needs and pressures rather than trying to create an affront or an assault on the Arab population, the Arab citizens of Israel, and the Palestinians who want to join.
All right, Ahmed Tibi, back in not too long ago, September 28th, I think it was, Avigdor Lieberman's speech to the UN noted the importance of moving borders to better reflect demographic realities, as he put it. Are you concerned that perhaps this is a step in the direction of changing the status of Israeli Arabs?
He talked in a very frank way about exchange of population. I think it's a gradual ethnic cleansing of Israel, as to have this kind of translation to the word Jewish state. He is saying that homogeneous Israel should be without Arab citizens, and those Arab citizens should be transferred to the sovereignty of Palestinian Authority, Palestinian state. He is trying, by this proposal, to revoke citizenship of hundreds of thousands of Israeli citizens just because they are non-Jews, just because they are Arabs.
Let me put a question to you. Let me put this question to you, if I may, Ahmed Tibi. If a Palestinian state is established, though, what would Israeli Arabs want to do? Would they want to retain their Israeli citizenship and not go to a Palestinian state?
No, we are talking about two-state solution in 1967 borders. We are struggling against occupation, but we are citizens of the State of Israel. We are struggling both in order to have
but what do you
independent
think
Palestinian
most
state
Israeli Arabs, you're a member of the Knesset, you represent Israeli Arabs. What do you think most Israeli Arabs would choose to do?
The vast majority of them have already said and are saying that they are willing to keep their identity, national identity as Palestinians and their citizenship, but to struggle to be equal citizenship where they are now. I am a resident of Taibe in the triangle, as you said, in the little triangle. There are residents of Nazareth in the Galilee. Nazareth and the Galilee are part of the state of Israel, but there are minorities, citizens, which are second or third degree citizens. We would like, after the settlement, after the implementation of the two-state solution, to try to act, to struggle in order to be equal. We don't like to hear all the time, move away, as some right-wing leaders in Israel are saying day by night.
All right, if I could bring Ms. Friedlander in for a comment before we run out of time here. The way that the political process is heading, it does look like there is talk of either transfer of population or transfer of border. Where do either of those sit legally and constitutionally?
I actually, if you don't mind, I actually wanted to go back to an earlier line, which was about the 20% Palestinian Arab minority in Israel today, and how this will or will not affect them. And I just wanted to couch this amendment again within a wider context in which the Arab minority is increasingly viewed as something suspect, where loyalty is under question and dissident voices from among the Arab minority are being limited in a fairly dramatic and anti-democratic way. So I think that the sort of wider atmosphere here is about limiting dissident voices, and that particularly affects Arab MKs as well as civil society actors, etc. And this is something that's of deep concern for us at the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, but something that should be of great concern as well to the Israeli public.
Okay, and ultimately the end game of this, some fear, may be forceful transfer of populations of borders. People wake up and find they're no longer citizens of the state they were. What's the legality of that?
You know, these kinds of eventual final status situations are, from our perspective, fairly far off. And so in our best professional assessment, it's about addressing each baby step that the state takes towards you know, any kind of violation of human rights inside Israel and the occupied territories. And so we're deeply invested in the day-to-day life of policies which are growing on the ground, and hoping that in addressing these harmful policies, we create a situation in which human rights and civil liberties are on the agenda for any eventual solution, such that an eventual solution couldn't possibly include something that was illegal or a gross violation.
All right, we'll have to leave the discussion there as we are running out of time. Let's thank our guests. In Tel Aviv, we have, of course, Libby Lenkinski-Friedlander, also in Tel Aviv, Ranan Gissin, and in Jerusalem, Ahmed Tibi. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story 2. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Feel free to email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. For now, it's goodbye.